But if you disrupt the proceedings, you may be excluded and jailed. To Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal, and they have incurred the wrath of the defendant's supporters. Let's remember that this is a historical case, the first ever trial of a former commander-in-chief, a former president. The whole case may go into May, maybe even up until June. I definitely think they're going to try to drag him through the mud. There are 34 counts of fiddling, messing with business records, all supposedly to pay off women and influence the election, 2016. So this case to me is super bizarro, but nonetheless, it has money, lawfare, politics, of course, salacious stories, a billionaire, and everyone that's after him. But what's weird is that why are they bringing this up now? This case has to do with interfering in the 2016 presidential election. 2016, not 2020. Pretty interesting. Seems a little... Okay, so today was jury selection. Probably the most interesting things that happened were basically concerning the judge himself. And just to let you know, the judge in this case is named Juan Merchant. He does seem a little odd. Some say maybe he's totally biased, but we'll see what he has to say. So this morning, the judge starts talking about, well, jury selection. He goes on to say that there are a few things to go over. First, he's got a list of things to go over. The first thing is the motion for him to recuse himself, filed by attorney Todd Blanche. And get this motion had page after page of social media posts, but the judge says that none of this shows any bias by the court, by himself or his family. With the judge saying that also this account did not belong to the family member at the time the post was made. Presumably they're talking about his daughter, who is supposedly a Democratic activist of sorts. Anyways, Judge Merchant continues. He says that the defendant argues that this court's family member does work for Democratic officials. He continues, but this court does not have any particular interest in reaching a particular conclusion in this matter, with Judge Merchant concluding that there is no basis for the recusal. He says that even if the companies that his relatives work for, presumably his daughter, were involved in fundraising campaigns mentioned in this case, that his relatives remain free, that they're free individuals to do as they please, I guess, saying that recusal is left to the discretion of the court, which is him. It's his decision. So, I don't know. It seems a little funny. The judge continues that the defendant pointed out to a podcast by a member of the court's family, providing a quote that says that politicians should not use Twitter, those mean tweets. Okay, so the judge totally shut down all the motions for recusal. Next, he talks about scheduling, saying that the trial would not conflict with Passover. But he says he's not going to rule at this time concerning the May the 17th, the graduation for former president's son, claiming that it all depends on if they're running on schedule, whatever that means. Trump's lawyer Blanche, he chimes in saying that he objects to questions regarding if someone has done any work for certain campaigns, and objecting to questions regarding if anyone has ever been to an event in favor of former president. Obviously, they're talking about campaign rallies or fundraising events. Then he says that it's unclear what anti-Trump means because they have a questionnaire for all the potential jurors. Judge Merchant responds, essentially blowing off any of his concerns, saying that the questionnaire is fine. Judge Merchant saying, we're trying to ascertain if a prospective juror is pro-Trump or anti-Trump. Hence, we ask. Next, one of the prosecutors chimes in, and honestly, this sounds like a joke because the prosecutor introduced a list of National Enquirer headlines. National Enquirer. Now, if you don't know what National Enquirer is, it is totally a joke. It's a tabloid newspaper focusing on celebrity gossip. It's all just BS, essentially. I think they also run stories on alien abductions. So, there's that. So one of the main prosecutors named Joshua Steinglass. He's the one who introduced the headline list regarding the National Enquirer. Funny enough, one of the headlines is also regarding Marco Rubio, another presidential candidate at the time that supposedly was addicted to drugs and was involved in his own sex scandal. National Enquirer. So, anyways, the prosecutor says that the list of National Enquirer headlines were perfectly timed to assist then presidential candidate Trump back in 2016, and that they attacked Ben Carson, another presidential candidate at the time, with the prosecutor saying that there will be evidence shown that the defendant said he was particularly pleased with the headlines, the National Enquirer. This is a joke. This does seem a little silly. The prosecutor continues that there will be evidence of the stories about Ted Cruz, another presidential candidate at the time, including the supposed role of his family in the assassination of JFK. What? This seems a little silly, you know? With the prosecutor saying that even though these conspiracies are not in itself illegal, they can be taken in furtherance of a greater conspiracy. So the prosecutor is essentially arguing regarding National Enquirer is that they're part of a deal struck between the former president and National Enquirer's owner, American Media Incorporated. Very interesting. All about damaging stories, the narrative. But they will be allowed to be introduced. Todd Blanche chimes in basically saying that this evidence would totally confuse the jury as to the actual crime charged, which makes sense. Anyways, Blanche did say that when a candidate meets with a particular publisher, there's nothing illegal and it's actually quite common. Blanche says that when the prosecution says there is no prejudice, the opposite is true. And this has nothing to do with the charges alleged, saying that this is a sideshow, that if Mr. Trump met with a publisher, it's not a crime. Funny enough, the judge sarcastically responds, "I'm glad that the defense does not see it as a crime, and they acknowledge that it happens all the time, because I will allow it to be introduced as evidence," saying that there was an understanding between Trump and the publisher, and certain things were going to happen in furtherance. Therefore, the judge says this would complete a narrative. So, he allows it. The prosecutor was apparently very content, thanking the judge. Anyways, prosecutor moves on, saying that we intend to introduce evidence regarding Karen McDougal, saying that her contact info was stored, and they have no intention to bring up any kind of descriptions regarding sexual acts during the period when Melania Trump was pregnant. But the prosecutor says this is very relevant. The prosecution continues, saying they also want to bring up a doorman, someone named Dino. Attorney Blanche chimes in, saying we object strenuously to the evidence about Miss Dougal, with Blanche saying there's a real risk of prejudice and no probative value, and it's all to embarrass former president. Prosecution chimes in, saying Your Honor has already ruled regarding Karen McDougal being relevant. So that's pretty interesting. Judge responds, saying my ruling stands with one exception, saying that he thinks it is prejudicial to talk about these acts being done while Melania was pregnant. So for now, he's not going to allow that aspect. Next, the prosecution brings up the Access Hollywood tape, saying that we seek to provide a more fulsome description, arguing that Mr. Trump brags about grabbing women's genitals, and that is sexual assault. Prosecutor saying that they want to describe the tape more accurately. So, salacious. Adding that they also seek to introduce some of E. Jean Carroll's depositions to connect it to the Access Hollywood tape, with the prosecutor saying, historically, that's true for stars, unfortunately or fortunately. So he says that the tape explains why the defendant was so intent on burying Stormy Daniels' story. Hence, according to the prosecutors, it completes of sorts. Adding that the tape went beyond locker room talk, so they want to talk about it some more. Next, the prosecution brings up an email chain they want to introduce as evidence. This one was apparently forwarded to Steve Bannon and Kellyanne Conway, and Steve Bannon forwarded the email to Michael Cohen, former president's former attorney, where Bannon asked Cohen who is doing damage control. Blanche stands up, saying we oppose the email chain being introduced and depositions from yet another case, with Judge Merchant responding that the tape will not be played itself. He's already ruled on that, but they can talk about the tape in detail, and the prosecution is not limited in their use of the words to describe the tape, and saying that he will allow the email chain because it will bolster the prosecution's case regarding a crucial event in his campaign. Pretty interesting. Back to the prosecutor. So they say that we seek to elicit the fact of additional allegations against Mr. Trump had emerged in the wake of the Access Hollywood tape, and that he became obsessed regarding denying and denigrating the accusers, with the prosecutor playing audio from a rally where the former president is heard saying they are trying to poison the mind of the American voter. Every woman lied. With the prosecutor saying he was concerned about the impact on voters. Prosecutor adding that the defendant wanted to lock the story down before it became the story that broke the camel's back. Adding that he wants to include as much information about additional charges of sexual assault by the defendant, with Blanche chiming in saying that those allegations were never proven. Judge Merchant says those videotapes, he's agitated. They are admissible. but he won't allow additional evidence regarding other allegations. Next, the prosecution says that they want to bring up attempts by the defendant to prevent others from talking to law enforcement, that these were inquiries in regard to Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal, with the prosecutor bringing up Michael Cohen meeting a lawyer named Costello, who apparently was impressed with Giuliani having a back channel to the former president, with the prosecutor saying that Mr. Cohen continued to lie for Mr. Trump for several months, and the truth is that Michael Cohen stayed loyal all because of the defendant's pressure, arguing, he says, that we have a right to show that, saying that in 2018 Cohen pled guilty to campaign finance violations. The next day, the defendant tweeted, "If anyone is looking for a good lawyer, Michael Cohen is not your man. I suggest you do not go to Michael Cohen." Prosecution says this should be admissible, saying that it is a clear effort to raise the cost of cooperation and that it goes to the consciousness of guilt. Next, prosecutor points to a Truth Social post where the former president says, "I did nothing wrong in the horse face trial. Just another false accusation by a sleazebag," with the prosecutor saying that the defendant was trying to influence the work of the grand jury, and that this work continues to this day. Furthermore, that they will move for contempt. Another post they bring up on Truth Social saying, "Thank you, Michael Avenatti, for posting the truth about two sleazebags," referring to Michael Cohen and Stormy Daniels. Funny about that Avenatti guy, because I remember he was on the news and some claimed that he himself potentially could run for president. That guy ended up in jail. He was so crooked, he even stole money from a handicapped person in a case that he won. He stole money from that handicapped guy. Prosecutor adds, this violated the court order, and it may have been seen as an intimidation tactic. Prosecutor continues that testifying in these cases have cost all these witnesses, and they have incurred the wrath of the defendant's supporters, and that we should be able to introduce evidence to counter the argument that they have benefited financially. Attorney Blanche says that this is pure hearsay, what Attorney Costello said to Michael Cohen regarding anything about President Trump. And Blanche says that regarding the tweets and the posts, the social media posts, that we anticipate putting some of those on presidential immunity. Attorney Blanche continues that he has a right to defend himself against any accusers and against witnesses broadcasting very loudly from rooftops, that he's facing criticism from President Joe Biden, the media, and he's simply defending himself, that this has nothing to do with the consciousness of guilt. Prosecutors still talking about Michael Cohen, saying that he's very much like a co-defendant in a robbery case who pleads guilty. But Attorney Blanche chimes in saying that my client is not here charged with campaign finance violations. Judge Merchant says nobody knows what's going to happen at trial, so it would not be proper right now to bind someone's hands. So, interesting. Okay, so that finishes that. Judge Merchant says that there's now 500 prospective jurors waiting. He also says that the defense counsel, the counsel for former president, must not offer a reason why the defendant may not testify, nor imply that there's another side to the story. Pretty interesting there. You can't say there's another side to the story. He says that counsel is directed to not approach any of the witnesses at any time. And if the defendant, former president, will testify, the counsel may reference that in their opening statement. But if he does not testify, the opening statement may not include what he might say. Well, that makes sense. Attorney Blanche chimes in saying that the former president wants to be present for everything that happens at trial. Probably a smart move. But the judge says that is tricky. Why? Why would that be tricky? With the judge saying they have to figure it out because of Secret Service, that there's a lot of them, that he's not sure if they will all fit in the courtroom. Next, the judge turns to the former president. He says, Mr. Trump, you may remember that I previously gave you Parker warnings. You have the right to be present at trial, but if you disrupt the proceedings, you may be excluded and jailed. If you fail to appear, a warrant may be issued for your arrest. Prosecutor jumps in saying, Your Honor, we seek for an order. We ask for a fine of $1,000 for social media post made by the defendant on Truth Social, and that the court order the defendant to take those posts down. And future posts, get this, should and could result in jail. Just the social media post. Prosecutor says there's a Truth Social post just at 9 a.m. this morning, quite possibly sent while in the courthouse. with a photo of Michael Cohen, calling him a serial perjurer and a shame for the New York court system. Judge is asking about the other social media posts that are in violation, claiming there's 3, that there's a praising Michael Avenatti's post with another post regarding Stormy Daniels' previous statements denying the affair itself, which was signed by Stormy Daniels, which is super interesting. I'll put it up on the screen. She basically says it never happened. So the whole thing is exceptionally bizarro because she denies it and she signed it. Pretty weird. And lastly, the prosecutor says there's another social media post regarding another prosecutor and that he has violated the order. The prosecutor brings up that the court had directed defense counsel to provide reciprocal discovery, with the prosecutor saying that we propose that all defense exhibits not designated in the next 24 hours be excluded. Attorney Blanche chimes in saying we have received over 200,000 pieces of paper from the Southern District of New York. But the judge says, no, we all know there's not 200,000 docs in there. Okay, so potential jurors come in, 96 of them. The judge says to them that the allegations are in substance that Donald Trump falsified business records with others to influence the 2016 election, that with Michael Cohen, pursuant to a legal retainer, paid Stormy Daniels, and that Mr. Trump denied these charges. He pled not guilty, with the judge saying, I know you don't want to reach a verdict based on implicit bias, different races, religious practice, or even political affiliations, that you may not make up your mind until the end. Furthermore, that the defendant is not required to prove his innocence. The defendant is not required to prove that he is not guilty. Next, the judge provides a list of names that may testify at trial, such as Steve Bannon, of course Donald Trump, Kellyanne Conway, Hope Hicks, Jared Kushner, Karen McDougal, Bradley Smith, Trump Jr., Melania Trump, Ivanka Trump, and many more, but not all of them will testify. It's a lot of names. He tells them that the name of the case is the people of New York versus Donald Trump. From the initial potential 96 jurors, 50, more than half, raised their hands that they could not be impartial in this case. So apparently just finding jurors, impartial jurors, is going to be very difficult. So this is the supposed official statement by Stormy Daniels, January the 30th, 2018, to whom it may concern. Over the past few weeks, I have been asked countless times to comment on reports of an alleged sexual relationship I had with Donald Trump many years ago. The fact of the matter is that each party to the alleged affair has denied its existence in 2006, 2011, 2016, 2017, and now in 2018. I'm not denying this affair because I have been paid hush money, as has been reported. I'm denying this affair because it never happened. I will have no further comment on this matter. Please feel free to check me out on Instagram at the Stormy Daniels. Signed, thank you, Stormy Daniels. Very interesting and kind of extremely confusing. I don't know what to make of that. Kind of extremely confusing because of all the allegations, because she sued him, all that jazz. So I don't know. Where's the truth? I don't know. Somewhere in there with lots of money. Maybe the truth is in someone's bank account. Who knows? Who knows? Anyways, it's going to be a big case, long-lasting case. I probably won't follow all of the jury selection. When the actual trial starts, I'll get back into the case in detail, of course, intro to the start of the trial. All right, guys, well, that's it for this one. Thanks for joining. Always a pleasure. Please don't forget to smash the like, subscribe if you haven't. I'll see you in the next one.